Ethan walked through the valley after a long storm. The rain had ruined the paths and his clothes were still damp. He did not know where he was going, but he kept walking because he needed to find a safe place to rest. The mountains around him looked tall and quiet, and he thought no one lived here. He was wrong. Hidden inside this valley was a kingdom that very few people had ever seen. The kingdom was ruled by a queen. Her daughter was known as Princess Leela. She lived in the castle with her mother, and many people in the land loved her because she was kind and gentle. But Leela was also curious. She often wished to see the outside world. She wanted to know what life was like beyond the mountains. She had heard stories about travelers, but had never spoken to one herself. When Ethan entered the valley, he did not expect to meet anyone. He only wanted shelter. Soon he saw tall stone walls hidden behind trees. He walked closer and was surprised to find guards standing at the gate. The guards looked at him with suspicion. They asked who he was and what he wanted. Ethan spoke with honesty. He told them he was a traveler who had lost his way and needed a place to rest. The guards were not sure if they should trust him, but they decided to bring him to the castle. Inside the castle, Ethan stood in the great hall. The queen looked at him with a serious face. She wanted to know if he was a danger. Ethan bowed politely and explained his story again. His words were simple and clear, and he did not try to hide anything. The queen listened carefully, but her daughter Leela was the one who paid the most attention. She had never seen someone like Ethan before. He looked different from the men in her kingdom. His clothes were worn, his hair messy, but his eyes carried honesty. Leela felt something stir in her heart, a mix of curiosity and wonder. She tried not to show it, but she kept looking at him. Ethan noticed her gaze and lowered his eyes respectfully. He knew she was a princess, and he was just a wanderer. He did not dare to think of more, but something inside him felt strange as well, as if fate had led him here for a reason. The queen asked him more questions. Where did he come from? What family did he have? And what did he seek? Ethan answered each question truthfully, spoke about his small village far away and how he traveled to learn more about the world. He did not ask for wealth or power, only for a roof above his head until the storm passed. His words impressed some of the courtiers, but others whispered with doubt. They wondered if he was hiding something. After some time, the queen allowed him to stay for a short while. She gave orders for him to be taken to a guest room. Ethan thanked her deeply. Before he was led away, he turned once more and saw Leela. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that moment, an unspoken connection formed. Neither of them understood it fully, but it was there, quiet yet strong. That night, Ethan lay on the bed in the guest room, unable to sleep. He thought about the princess. He tried to push the thought away, reminding himself that she was of royal blood, and he was no one important. Still, her face stayed in his mind. At the same time, Leela sat by her window in the castle tower, looking out at the moonlit valley. She thought about the traveler, about his quiet strength and honest voice. She did not know why, but she felt her life had just changed. The valley was still and silent, but inside both their hearts, something new had begun. It was only the start, but it was powerful enough to shape everything that would come after. The next morning, Ethan woke early in his guest room. Sunlight came through the small window, filling the space with a warm glow. He felt calmer than he had the night before, though his thoughts were still filled with the image of the princess. He reminded himself that he was only a guest and must not cross any lines. Still, a quiet voice in his heart told him that something important was waiting for him here. In another part of the castle, Princess Leela was already awake as well. She had not slept much. She thought about the traveler, about his words and his manner. He had been polite and truthful, and that impressed her more than she could say. Unlike many of the noblemen she had met before, he seemed different. He carried no pride, no arrogance. He was simple, but strong in his own way. Leela wondered what he might say if she spoke to him alone. Later in the morning, the queen held a small court gathering. Ethan was called to stand before her once again. Many members of the court sat around, whispering and watching. The queen asked Ethan to tell more about his life, and he answered with honesty. He spoke of his village, of the people who raised him, of his travels through forests and rivers. He did not claim to be anything more than a wanderer, yet the way he spoke showed that he had seen the world in ways others had not. Leela listened carefully, her heart stirred with every word. When the court ended, Ethan was told he could walk in the gardens to rest. He was grateful for the chance to breathe in the fresh air. The gardens were beautiful, filled with flowers, tall trees, and fountains that sparkled under the sunlight. As he walked slowly, he felt peace, yet he also felt the sense that he was being watched. From behind a tall hedge, Leela stepped forward. She had come without her attendants, without her guards. Her eyes held a secret spark as she looked at him. Ethan bowed at once, unsure if he should even speak first. But Leela smiled gently, easing his worry. She asked him if he liked the gardens. He nodded and said they were the most peaceful place he had seen in a long time. She asked about his travels, and he told her simple stories of the roads he had walked, the rivers he had crossed, and the strangers who had helped him along the way. Leela listened with deep interest. She asked questions, not as a princess, but as a girl who was eager to know more about the world outside. Ethan found himself speaking freely, forgetting for a moment that she was royalty. He saw the brightness in her eyes, and he realized that she was not only curious, but also lonely in some ways. Few people in her kingdom spoke to her with such openness. For the first time, she felt like someone saw her, not only as a princess, but as herself. The sun slowly moved across the sky as they talked. Time passed quickly, and neither of them noticed how long they had been together. At one point, a bird flew down near them, and Leela laughed softly. Ethan smiled at the sound.
Ow.
It felt natural, as if they had known each other for far longer than a single day.
Oh.
But the peace of the moment did not last. A servant passed by and saw them talking alone. The servant bowed quickly, but carried the news back to the queen. Soon after, the queen heard whispers about the princess spending time with the traveler. Some courtiers spoke with doubt, saying it was not proper for her to be alone with a stranger. The queen listened, but said nothing yet. She wanted to see with her own eyes what her daughter truly felt. That evening, when Ethan returned to his room, he thought about his talk with Leela. He felt light inside, as if a door had opened in his heart. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew this much. The princess trusted him enough to seek him out, and that meant more than any treasure he had ever dreamed of. In her tower, Leela thought the same. She knew her choice to speak with him was bold, but she did not regret it. Something had begun between them, something she could not ignore. The days passed slowly, but with quiet excitement for both Ethan and Leela. Each time the sun rose, Ethan hoped he might catch a glimpse of the princess. Each evening, Leela found herself waiting for a chance to see the traveler again. Their meetings were never planned, but fate seemed to guide them together. Whether in the gardens, in the halls, or near the old library where Leela often spent her afternoons. They spoke softly, always careful that too many eyes did not follow them. Leela felt her heart grow lighter when she was around him. She found herself laughing at his small stories, even when they were simple. Ethan, on the other hand, carried a quiet strength. Though he did not boast, she could tell he had endured many struggles. What drew her most was his honesty. He never tried to impress her with false words. He told her truths, both good and painful, and this made her trust him. One evening, when the castle was full of music for a celebration, Leela slipped away from the crowd. She found Ethan walking alone near the courtyard. Lanterns lit the stone walls, and the air was filled with the sound of distant songs. She asked him if he liked the gathering, and he replied that he was not used to such grand events. He admitted he felt out of place among nobles who wore fine clothes and spoke with pride. Leela smiled and said she often felt the same, even though she was the princess. In that moment, Ethan looked at her not as royalty, but as someone who longed for freedom, just as he did. Their bond grew stronger with each word, but so did the whispers in the court. Many people noticed the closeness between the princess and the traveler. Some said it was dangerous for the future of the kingdom. Others were simply jealous of the attention Leela gave to someone who had no title. Servants carried tales, and these stories soon reached the queen herself. She began to wonder what kind of spell this stranger had placed on her daughter. One night, Leela asked Ethan to meet her in the old temple beneath the castle. It was a place where the royal family once prayed, but was now quiet and rarely visited. The walls were carved with figures and symbols, and candles flickered in the cool air. Ethan entered carefully, unsure why she had chosen this place. Leela stood near the altar, her eyes calm, but serious. She told him that she wanted to know if she could truly trust him. She had risked her reputation by speaking with him, and she wanted to see his heart clearly. Ethan felt the weight of her words. He assured her that his feelings were true, but she wanted more than words. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. She placed herself before him in a way that made him freeze. Her gesture was bold, a test of his respect. She wanted to see if he would take advantage of her, or if he would remain steady. For a moment, silence filled the room. Ethan stood still, his breath caught, but he did not move forward. He only looked into her eyes and spoke softly that he would never harm her trust. Lila felt her heart race. His choice spoke louder than any promise. She knew then that Ethan was different from others who sought her attention. He did not chase her beauty, nor her title. He honored her. That respect became the foundation of something much deeper than either of them expected. She smiled gently, and the heaviness in the room lifted. Ethan released a quiet sigh, knowing he had passed a test he had not even understood until that moment. But outside the temple, footsteps echoed in the dark halls. A servant had followed and seen them together. Oh. Though the servant did not hear their words, the sight was enough to feed the rumors. Soon, many in the court would claim that the princess had given her heart to the traveler in secret. That night, as Ethan returned to his chamber, he felt both hope and worry. He had gained her trust, but he also sensed danger in the whispers that followed him. In her tower, Lila looked at the moon and felt the same. She had chosen to believe in Ethan, and she would not turn back, no matter what storm might rise within the kingdom. The rumors spread quickly through the castle halls. Servants whispered, nobles frowned, and guards traded stories in the shadows. Everyone spoke about the princess and the traveler, and every telling made the story grow larger than it was. Some said Ethan had bewitched the princess. Others claimed the princess had broken royal customs by seeking him out. The truth was softer, but the whispers were louder than truth. The queen listened to all these voices. She did not act at once, for she was wise enough to watch before judging, yet her heart was troubled. She had always dreamed of choosing a strong and noble husband for her daughter, one who could guide the kingdom in the future. A traveler with no land and no name did not seem worthy of her child. Still, she had seen his honesty before, and that stopped her from condemning him too quickly. Ethan felt the tension around him wherever he went. People stared at him with suspicion. Some refused to speak to him at all. A few even muttered insults under their breath when he passed, tried to ignore them, but the weight of their judgment pressed on him. More than once he thought of leaving the castle quietly, but each time he remembered Lila. Her trust gave him strength to stay, though he knew it placed him in danger. Lila, on the other hand, refused to hide her feelings. She spoke to Ethan when she wished, though she was careful not to dishonor her family. Still, her courage drew even more attention. One afternoon, as they walked together in the gardens, a group of noblemen bowed before her but cast sharp glances at Ethan. After they left, Lila told him that many would never accept their closeness. Ethan nodded but said he could only live by truth, not by fear of whispers. His words touched her deeply, and she held them close to her heart. That evening, the queen called for her daughter in private. She asked her if the rumors were true, if she had indeed chosen to favor the traveler above others. Lila did not deny it. She told her mother that Ethan was not like the men of the court. He did not seek her for her crown, but saw her as a person. The queen listened in silence, her face unreadable. At last she said that trust was a strong bond, but trust alone could not guide a kingdom. Lila replied that a man who could be trusted was worth more than 10 men with titles. The queen did not answer, but dismissed her gently. Meanwhile, Ethan was also tested. A group of courtiers cornered him in the training yard. They mocked his plain clothes and simple ways. One of them even drew a sword, pointing it at him.
Ethan did not rise to their anger.
He stood calmly and told them he had no wish for titles or power. He only wanted to repay the kindness of the queen and the princess by being honest and loyal. His calm manner surprised them, and though they still despised him, they could not claim he was dishonorable. The court continued to buzz with anger, and finally the queen decided to speak to Ethan herself. She asked him directly if he had feelings for her daughter. Ethan bowed and told her the truth, said he respected the princess more than anyone he had ever met. He admitted that he admired her heart and her courage, but he also knew that he was not born into her world. The queen studied him carefully. His words carried no deceit, and his eyes were steady. She did not answer at once, but a small part of her heart softened. Lila soon learned that the Queen had spoken to Ethan. Instead of feeling fear, she felt proud. She told Ethan that the road ahead would not be easy, but she did not wish to turn back. He promised her he would stand beside her no matter what came. They both knew the path they had chosen was filled with risk, but their bond was now strong enough to face it. Far beyond the walls of the castle, however, trouble was brewing. Raiders from the hills had begun to gather, preparing to attack the valley. The kingdom would soon face a threat greater than rumors and whispers. Neither Ethan nor Leela knew it yet, but the time was coming when their bond would be tested not only by words but by fire and battle. The news of raiders spread quickly through the valley. Messengers came to the castle gates with fear in their voices. They spoke of armed men gathering in the hills, planning to strike the kingdom. The Queen called her council at once, and the great hall filled with worried faces. Soldiers stood ready, but the danger was greater than many had seen in years. The Queen looked over her court and then at her daughter. Lila sat quietly, though her heart was heavy. She wondered what part Ethan would play in this storm. Ethan did not wait to be asked. He came before the Queen and offered his help. He said he had traveled many roads and had fought to survive more than once. He explained that while he was not born a soldier, he had the skills of a man who had faced hardship. Some nobles scoffed at his words, but the Queen watched him closely. She saw that he spoke not for glory, but with true intent. After a long silence, she agreed to give him a chance. She told him he would ride with the soldiers to defend the border. When Ethan prepared to leave the castle, Leela found him in the courtyard. She was afraid, but tried not to show it. She told him to be careful, and he promised her he would return. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of soldiers and horses around them seemed to fade. Lila wanted to hold him, but she only whispered that she trusted him. Ethan carried those words with him as he rode out with the men. The hills were dark with smoke as the raiders drew near. They came with torches and sharp blades, shouting with wild voices. The soldiers of the kingdom lined up, shields raised and swords drawn. Ethan stood among them, his heart steady. He remembered the lessons of the road, the times he had fought for his life. Now he was not fighting for himself, but for the princess, for the Queen, and for the people who had given him a place in their world. The battle was fierce. The raiders struck hard, trying to break through the line. Ethan fought with all his strength, moving with speed and courage. He helped men who fell, pushed back those who came too close, and showed no fear, even when the odds seemed against them. The soldiers began to look at him not as a stranger, but as a brother in arms. His courage spread through the line, giving them the will to stand firm. Hours passed before the raiders finally broke. Many fled back into the hills, leaving their dead behind. The kingdom's soldiers stood tired but victorious. Ethan, though wounded on his arm, had fought until the last. When the soldiers marched back to the castle, they carried news of his bravery. The whispers that once called him an outsider now spoke of him as a hero. In the great hall, the Queen listened to the reports. She turned to Ethan and saw him standing tall despite his wound. She rose from her seat and declared before all that he had proven himself. He had defended the kingdom not with words but with action. The court could no longer doubt his honor. Many bowed their heads in respect, though some still held their pride. The Queen, however, had made her choice. That night, Lila met Ethan in the quiet of the gardens. She saw the bandage on his arm and felt tears in her eyes, but he only smiled. He told her that the wound was nothing compared to the joy of keeping his promise. She told him that she had never doubted he would return. In the silence that followed, they both knew their bond was unshakable. The Queen later gave her blessing. She told Lila that love built on trust and courage was stronger than any crown. She told Ethan that though he was not born into their world, he had earned his place in it. The words lifted a weight from both their hearts. For the first time, they could look toward the future without fear. The story of the princess and the traveler spread through the land. People spoke not of whispers or doubts, but of love, trust, and the courage that had saved them all. And in the castle, under the light of the moon, Leela and Ethan stood together, ready to walk the path that fate had given them. Hand in hand with hope shining brighter than any storm.